Hi everybody, in this video we are going to be graphing parabolas and finding the same key features that were on our vocabulary earlier in the week. The vertex, the x-intercepts, and the axis of symmetry. A lot of these questions on the EOC are on the portion of the test where you do not have a calculator, so it's important that we have strategies that we can do by hand. I will be using a calculator just to make the adding and subtracting and multiplying quicker. But if I had to, I could do all of this without a calculator. All right, so here's my first example, and I want to graph this. In the Delta Math assignment, we need 5 points. The first thing that I'm going to look at is the fact that this is a negative. That tells me that it's going to have a sad face shape. It's going to be open down, and it will have a maximum point. Anytime your leading x squared is negative, that's the general shape of the graph. The other thing that I can tell from the equation is the y-intercept. Whatever that last number is the constant. So that is the y-intercept. Will be the point 0, negative 48, because if I plug 0 in for x, that would be 0, that would be 0, it would just be minus 48. Now that's not helpful for this particular problem because my graph only goes up to 10 and negative 10, but it's important to know that I can get the y-intercept from the equation by looking at the number at the end. All right, I'm going to factor. Factors help us find the x-intercepts. And the x-intercepts are also called the zeros. So I'm going to take this trinomial and I'm going to factor it. The first thing I'm going to do every single time it's negative is I'm going to put the negative on the outside of parentheses. And what that's going to do is change all of my signs. So instead of a negative x squared, it would be positive x squared. Instead of plus 14x, minus 14x. Instead of minus 48, plus 48. That's going to be a lot easier to factor. So when I factor, I know that I'm looking for two numbers. It's x and x, and when I multiply them together, I get 48, and when I combine them together, I get negative 14. So I'm just going to do a little side work. I'm going to list my factors of 48. 1 times 48, 2 and 24, 3 times 16 is 48, 4 times 12, and 6 times 8. Those are all the factors that go into 48. So I'm looking for the pair that when I combine them, I get negative 14. So it looks like 6 and 8. I just have to make them both negative. If I make them both negative, they will combine to negative 14. So negative 6 and negative 8, and then I can check if I need to. Negative 6 times negative 8 is positive 48. So these are my factors. X minus 6 and x minus 8. So the first thing I'm going to do is factor. All right, the factors help me find the x-intercepts because the x-intercepts make the factor equal 0. That's exactly why we give it that other name of 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate my factors and I'm going to figure out what number, when I minus 6, will give me 0? If you wanted to solve this, you just add 6 to both sides, and you would get that x is equal to 6, and that should make sense because 6 minus 6 is 0. So now I can plot that point at 6 on my x-axis. All right, I'm going to do the same thing for my other factor. X minus 8 equals 0. So what number minus 8 will be 0? 8. 8 minus 8 is 0. So there's my other x-intercept. So I can go ahead and plot that point right there on my x-axis. So I factor it and I figure out what number makes the factor equal 0, and those are my x-intercepts. All right, now that I know where my x-intercepts are at, I can find my axis of symmetry. My axis of symmetry is halfway between the zeros. Halfway between the zeros. So halfway between 6 and 8 is 7. So here's my axis of symmetry. So that's just the x. My vertex needs to be a point. So I need an x and I need a y to put somewhere on here. So I'm going to plug the x in order to get the vertex. So here was my equation. Wherever I see x, I'm going to plug in 7 because 7 was my halfway in between. So that's where my vertex is. So that's going to look like negative 7 squared plus 14 times 7 minus 48. So 7 squared is 49. A negative makes it negative 49. Plus 14 times 7 is 98 minus 48. When I work that out, I get 1. So that means my vertex is at the point 7, 1. And remember where I got the 7 from. Halfway in between 6 and 8. And then I plug 7 in for x and it gives me 1. So now I can plot the point 7, 1. All right, I need 2 more points, and this graph is going to be symmetric. So I'm only going to be able to get my third or my fourth and fifth point by plugging another number in for x. Every time you plug a number in for x, it tells you the y of where to plot it. So 5 and 9 are going to be the same because of that symmetry. 5 is easier to plug in. So I'm going to get my last point by plugging in 5 wherever I see x. So that's going to be negative 5 squared plus 14 times 5. I didn't make this box big enough, but that's okay. Minus 48. 5 times 5 is 25. That's going to make it negative. 14 times 5 is 70. Minus 48. And when I simplify that, I get negative 3. So I'm going to fill in my table just so I can kind of keep track of all the points that I've gotten so far. So when I plugged in 5, I got negative 3. 6, 0 was one of my x-intercepts. 7, 1 is my vertex. 8, 0 is my other x-intercept. And then because of the symmetry, I know that 9 has to also be negative 3. Do you see how 1 is in the middle? And then those two are the same? And then those two are the same? So that's kind of a shortcut that we can use. So 5, negative 3, and 9, negative 3. Now I have 5 points, and now Delta Math will let me plot and graph that parabola. And see, that shape is the same shape I knew it would make because it started off negative. All right, let's do one more. So this one is positive, so it's going to make a happy face, which means it will have a minimum as a vertex. And I can see here the last number is 8. So my y-intercept is going to be the point 0, 8. Now I can actually plot that. So that can be one of the 5 points that I go ahead and use on this graph. I'm going to factor it to help me get the x-intercepts. So factors of 8, 1 times 8, 2 times 4, the pair that adds up to 6 is 2 and 4. And I can set up the box to check x plus 2, x plus 4. This is going to work because those add up to 6. So here are my factors, x plus 2 and x plus 4. Now I can set those equal to 0 so I can get my x-intercepts. So what is going to make x plus 2 equal 0? If I subtract 2 on both sides, I get negative 2. And that makes sense because negative 2 plus 2 is 0. Same thing on the other side. I'm going to minus 4. And that should make sense because negative 4 plus 4 is 0. So now I can plot both of those points. Now I can find my axis of symmetry because halfway in between those is negative 3. So I'm going to plug negative 3 wherever I see x. So negative 3 squared plus 6 times negative 3 plus 8. Negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. 6 times negative 3 is negative 18 plus 8. When you add that all up, you get negative 1. So that means my vertex is at the point negative 3, negative 1. So negative 3 is the middle of my table. So negative 3, negative 1. I know that negative 2 is 0. I know that negative 4 is 0. I don't know negative 1, but I know that 0 is 8 because that's my y-intercept. So negative 4, negative 5, negative 6. So see the symmetry here? Here's my middle. Those two match. Those two match, I just don't know what they are yet. And then these two have to match. So I need to be able to plot the point negative 6, 8. And technically for this delta math, that is enough because that is 5 points. And that's the same shape I thought it would make. For practice, I can take one of these and plug it in wherever I see x. I'm going to use negative 1 because it's smaller. So negative 1 squared plus 6 times negative 1 plus 8. Negative 1 squared is 1. 6 times negative 1 makes that negative 6 plus 8. And when I put that all together, I'm going to get 3. So those 2 points are negative 1, 3, and negative 5, 3. Because of the symmetry, I know those two have to be the same. All right, so that's basically what we're going to be doing for this. We're going to be factoring it, finding the x-intercepts from the factors, then find the axis of symmetry. That will give me a number that I can plug in for x. Now I have a point for my vertex, and then you're just going to have to pick one other number and plug it in for x, and that will give you 2 points. And once you have a total of 5 points, Delta Math will let you graph it.